Guys, welcome again for another episode of My Two Cents podcast. This week we want to start a bit of a discussion or a conversation around resiliency and how to achieve growth. We want to talk about resiliency, but then through empathy, resiliency, and passion. Now, I have someone lovely on the other side. You can see her on my left or maybe on my right. I'm not completely sure what you will see in the end recording. Estrella, can you introduce yourself shortly?
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, first of all, for the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. Sure. So my name is Estrella Lopez-Brea, originally from Spain, as you might figure out by my name. And I have been in the world of insights for a long time, about 23 years, I believe now. Working mostly on large multinationals like Coca-Cola, Nestle, and General Mills. And because of my work, I was lucky enough to live in different countries. So I lived in the US, in Chicago, then in Madrid. And now I currently live in Switzerland, where I've been here for the last about 6 years. And I am just passionate about consumer and people and empathy and personal development and growth. And that's where the combinations of all of the things that you mentioned come through: the resilience, the empathy, and the passion. I think they all have something beautiful in common.
Cool, cool. Hey, what's amazing is that we just met a few weeks ago. We both started the Power MBA, an online MBA course, because we both wanted to um, learn. Actually, we're both lifelong learners, and we both wanted to learn more, get some new insights, now some new spikes and new inspiration. And during a session we met, we had a call afterwards, and you really inspired me. So let's try and see if we can inspire the people who are listening today into the podcast. So the topic we wanted to talk about is how to achieve growth as a person, as a business, and how can you make sure that you are energized to really get on with it and not stay hanging on old stuff. And you wrote a beautiful article which is on LinkedIn. I will put a link to the article below, so don't start looking for it. Just listen, just enjoy, be relaxed, because we're going to talk about this topic in the next 20 minutes. But maybe we could give a bit of a head count on why you written that article, because I think that's an important thing. Why do you write an article like that?
It's funny because the story comes because for some reason someone reached out to me to talk about resilience in an event. And I was like, oh, wow, why, I'm not an expert on resilience. I'm not a coach. I'm not a psychologist. Why would someone call me to talk about it? And I guess, reflecting a little bit, I have come to realize a little bit that, life is tough, right? For all of us. It's cluttered, it's unstable, it's uncertain. And there's a lot of things that happen, right? On our personal lives, on our work life. Different elements. And that has also happened to me, right? And I guess looking a little bit back, I have realized that all of these unexpected, or I would say negative experiences that have happened to me have put a little bit of a mindset in how I approach difficulties. So I had that event, and I spoke at that event, and I got some good, people telling me, how you inspired me. It was so interesting, and that led me to write the article that I wrote on LinkedIn. So, but yeah, it's basically about life. It's hard, and what have I learned through my life that at some point it seems that has inspired, someone else for me to talk. So that was the origin.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, I remember during the COVID, we were talking about, and this is the pre-COVID period, we talk about the PPE. Companies need to focus more on the PPE. PPE stands for positivity, passion, and empathy. But you're giving it a bit of a different one. So I'm keen to see if at the end we could crack the code that PPE is going to be RPE, resilience, passion, and empathy. What do you think about that one?
I like that. I like that. I mean, I think I mean, I think both are good. I do have a little bit of a bias for the importance of resilience in this world, and I think COVID has been the perfect example that a huge challenge that we have all faced, that all of a sudden we just need to face, and we need to adapt, and we need to pivot, and we need to successfully overcome. There's no other choice, right? It's not about do I do this or not. It's like, no, there's no other choice. You just have to go through it. So I think it has created the perfect storm for all of us to build a little bit that resilience muscle, and to find ways to keep us moving forward. And I think the most important element to me is the growth element that comes to it, because when we are facing an uncertainty or a challenge, it usually involves a great deal of personal growth, because there's reflection, there's learning, there's getting out of your comfort zone. So yeah, that's why I do have a little bit of a bias for resilience, but I like your model too.
Well, I think that I'm glad that you are talking about resilience, because I think that the positivity aspect is something which comes when you are under control. And these elements you need to get under control before you can be positive. You see it within organizations. I see it with people I coach and train, but I also see it in my teams from the past. I still speak with those guys and ladies, and you're starting to notice now, especially now when we are post-COVID. I'm not allowed to say post-COVID, but let's hope we are post-COVID. We're going back to work. That people start to struggle. A year and a half they have been punching it, working from home, taking care of their family. Some people have lost people in their close vicinity. Now we're getting to the point that companies are opening up. I still live in Barcelona, and what I see is that the traffic jams are getting more, so people are getting back to work. A lot of people don't want to go back to work, so there's a lot of emotions currently going around. Going to work, do I like my company? How do I combine things again, because I'm used to being at home for my kids, and all that stuff is building up. I do believe, and I agree with you, that resilience is a really important item, but not many people understand what it actually means. What did it actually mean for you?
Yes. Good question. So, I mean, psychologists define resilience as the process of adapting to adversity, right? I do see resilience as, I know that there's a lot of buzz, and it is a fancy word, and now it's appearing everywhere, but there's a core element of it, which is just, advancing and moving. I think there's nothing worse than the feeling of a stagnation and not movement, especially when you're struggling. There has to be a way to go through that challenge and feeling better. So the question is, how do you do that in a way that is possible for you mentally and physically? And we all have challenges, and some of them might be smaller, some of them might be more important and difficult, definitely. But I think there's, at least when I reflect about my personal situation, I find that there's a few elements that happen to be common, no matter if the challenge is big or small. And those are, I think, that the elements that I kind of try to transmit when I talk about this. The first one, it's very simple. It's just about when something happens to you, we all try to or tend to resist the situation, right? Why did this happen to me? How is it possible? The world has confabulated against me. Yes, but what you have control over is to separate a bit the things that you have control over and the things that you don't. And the first thing in order for that to happen is to have an acceptance of the situation and avoid that resistance. And that's not giving up. I think it's something necessary to move forward. So if an event happens to you, like I had an accident, a very sports accident a few years ago, where I've been a year and a half in crutches. Yes, really bad. And at that moment, of course, my initial reaction was, oh my God, this, I was so sportive, and now what do? I'm not independent. And then the moment I'm like, I'm not being helpful with myself. This is not helping me move forward. So I decided to accept what has happened and say, I cannot change the fact that this accident happened to me. I cannot go back to the past. It's useless for me to keep complaining about it. But what I can do is to decide, what do I do with that portion that I can act on, which is getting better and exercise and work hard and eat protein to build my muscle that I lost and try to walk a little bit every day. So that part to me is the foundation of resilience, is acceptance of what has happened, that negative event, and really act on the piece that you can control.
I really like this one, because it's not only personally. If I translate it to my work, helping organizations in their transformations, helping people to think about the future and take those little steps which bring them closer towards accepting and getting a desire to move forward, it's actually quite the same. It starts with a baseline. It starts with acceptance. It starts with understanding. Because I think that's the key thing. Before you can accept something, you first need to understand. Then you can accept, and then you can actually move forward what's beyond your control. But that progress every day is actually quite difficult. And I think that one of the things and I'm going to touch it actually quite later, is the confidence part, but also the help you get moving forward. So one of the things you mentioned is around accept, move forward, take small steps. But that confidence part, I can imagine for a lot of people, and this is also for not only for people, but also for businesses, is the confidence of what I'm doing. Is it the right thing to do? What did that mean for you?
Yes, I think that's a very important part, because when we face a challenge, we're in a situation of vulnerability. So we're more likely to be affected by these beliefs or negative elements, right? And sometimes it's just ourselves telling it ourselves, like, you cannot do it, this is too hard, you're not going to be able to make it. If you're in business and you have a challenge and you have to face a decision, I don't know how I'm going to solve this. And you start creating that self-talk that often is absolutely counterproductive. It not only doesn't help, but it can start diminishing your confidence, and then you get down the hole, farther down the hole, instead of getting outside of the hole. So I think, to me, the most important thing is that once you detect that in yourself, you have to stop it. You have to stop it and start understanding that that is not a realistic thing, that is just the sense of vulnerability that is bringing that lack of worry, that worry and that lack of confidence to ourselves. So the sooner you cut with it, I think the better.
It actually triggers me also a bit to the business side of things. We're talking about confidence of starting something new. What you see in the startup world, I was recently reading the Lean Startup, which is also actually part of the course, but I actually bought the book.
Yeah, I have it too. I have it too.
Perfect. But it's getting yourself to the point that you can take those smaller steps moving forward and learn from them. Because sometimes that bigger step is too big of a leap. If you look at companies and in a startup environment, it's the same thing. We want to take massive leaps. We want to go towards the end goal. We want to rush. But by doing that, we don't have time to process and learn from the objectives and from the things which are happening on a day-to-day basis. And I think that learning part is really important. Now, there's also an element of when people are in trouble. I hope that most of the people, and I'm not a statistical, I don't know any statistics around this topic, but I hope that most of the people dare and want to find help. Because I think that when something happens to you, a lot of people tend to look at themselves and they get into that vault. They close themselves up. Um, and then you have people who open up. They try to find help, which is great. One of the biggest things you see lately is the mental health issue. In the
Yes.
UK, it's a massive problem, but I guess it's all over the place that mental health is one of the number one priorities for most markets and for most governments. The question is, do you always have to listen? Because the point I want to make here is asking for help is great. Getting help is even better, but getting the right help is the thing you're looking for. So how do you filter that out?
Yes. Yeah, I think this is a really important topic that you're mentioning, and I do agree with that. I think, I mean, I'm sure you would agree with me that, you know, overcoming adversity is hard enough to do it alone. You know, so you know, we're human beings. We're elements of connection. So turning into friends and colleagues and people that you trust can be a great source of help, of strength, of guidance, and that should always be a priority, because as you said, doing it alone can be just so hard. Can be hard on a regular basis. If you're struggling, it can be even harder. But what I try to also kind of what I do advocate for is also that not all help is the right help. I do have that big caveat that, you know, while being surrounded by people, it's critical, not everyone is necessarily helpful. And I think, as you mentioned, you can find that in many spaces in the workplace too. I mean, you know, imagine that, I don't know, you're going through a reorganization in your company and you're struggling and you're in a moment of uncertainty, and you find yourself that, yes, it's great to be surrounded by people who are in the same situation, but all of the talk and the chit chat and the going over and over and over and running down the circle is just not helpful. So having a bit of a cold mind to be able to separate a little bit from those conversations or from those people that are not necessarily toxic, but that at that moment, it might be good friends, but they're not being helpful. And I think that's totally okay to say, hey, I really appreciate you as a person, but at this moment, I hope you respect that I'm going to remove from this conversation, so from this chat or from this meeting or from this whatever. I think that should be absolutely acceptable, and not only acceptable, but even I totally recommend it. I mean, it has definitely worked for me, but I think it's the only way for us to protect our minds in a way that can really, that we can really move forward. So yeah.
This is actually a really good one. Stepping out of the line of expectations from others, because I think one of the reasons people are also struggling with resiliency is that we are doing our best to do what others expect from us. And that load can be too much. Look at the COVID time when people had the kids at home, their parents were at home, they couldn't see family, all the things they had to manage. Here in Spain, we could go out to do shopping one day a week. We were stuck at home. So all that stuff, there was a lot of expectation from others. Not only from you work from 9 to 5, but work from 9 to 5 started to be work from 6 to 11. And in between it was the kids, and in between it was all the other stuff. There is a moment that you have to say no. I think that's one of the things you want to convey to. Sometimes you have to say no. And I think that one thing we should bring over is that saying no actually means saying yes to other things.
Yeah, exactly. I think saying yes to ourselves, right? I think at some point you have to stop being politically correct to meet the expectations of others, and we have to take care of ourselves. And in terms of a struggle, it's a moment where I think it's more than acceptable that we take care of ourselves and that we prioritize ourselves, because otherwise it can get really tough.
I believe so. I believe so. Hey, looking at the time, I'm going to ask you for your final tips. The final tips you want to give to the audience, to people who are listening today, which they can take on practically right now and make a first shift in taking the next step in building that resilience and building their own growth.
So we talked about resilience already, right? Which to me, it's all about accepting what has happened, acting over the sphere that is left where you have your control, and making that small steps. I think that is one important element. The other one, as we talked, is about people, but also has to do with the empathy element that we talked at the very beginning. It's not only, it's about understanding each other. It's about putting ourselves in the self of another person. And it can be that someone has to be in our shoes, but also that we have to do the same for the rest, because someone else might be struggling and we may not even realize, right? And it has always been also not on a personal level, but a critical skill for leadership. And I think that the more we cultivate it, the better. Those are things, resiliency and empathy and passion, that are not taught in school, right? They're not directly taught in school. So we better learn them. We don't have a choice. We better learn them to be better human beings and better professionals. And then the last one I would quickly say is about passion, that we also talked at the very beginning. I don't think you can have a sense of success if you don't have some kind of a meaning or a passion about what you do. Not because you may not achieve your goal, but because you might think that your goal is not worth the effort that you're doing. So if, in order to be happy and to continue growing and to feeling good with yourself, it's important that we do that work of understanding what is it that makes us happy? What is, that thing that is meaningful for us. And I believe that the combination of all these three elements, the empathy, the passion, and the resilience, will make us all just better human beings and better leaders too.
Wow, amazing. So I think we cracked the code. We started with PPE. We're now talking about RPE. That's the next best level. Hey, I really want to thank you for doing this podcast with us, because I think this message is really, really important. It's amazing to have you here, but I think that maybe people want to connect with you because they think, wait a minute, Estrella, she has something there. Maybe it's something we need to explore further. How can you help them? How can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, I think the best way is LinkedIn, just because I'm pretty active there. And it's the best way. So they can just find me in LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to connect and to chat. I'm always for increasing networks and meeting other interesting people. So happy to be available there.
Perfect. Hey, just something extra, because this lady is really amazing in translating data and insights into customer behavior. So if you are actually interested in learning more about that, I think that's also another business topic Estrella can help you guys with. So I'm just opening up and throwing up the ball for you guys. Again, thank you so much for joining. I found it amazing to have a chat with you around this topic. I'm so glad I met you.
Thank you.
And that Power BI has actually brought us together as a new team. And we're going to keep in touch, because I think we're going to have more discussions on some other topics in the future. Thank you again.
Thank you. Fabulous.